maybe making a reversionable table, which means you're not deleting data, you're just setting a date when you deleted it.
Like a soft delete.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to go there for two reasons. One, there is a plugin already for that, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to present it. And secondly, because I am personally against soft deletable behaviors.
Would you explain why? Because not to question, but to understand.
I'm not against the feature.
Okay.
That makes sense, the feature, but a general behavior doesn't make a lot of sense because not in all cases you want that rule to trigger, and you end up, as the application grows, fighting more against the soft delete than using it. So it's great when you start, but then it's hell because you start getting more bugs and bugs and bugs because you forgot to disable in this particular specific case. So that's why it's just one thing from my experience that every time I enable that, I end up regretting it.
So to understand, so I understand correctly that you would do it opt-in on where it's
yeah, every time I know I need to filter on deleted, I do that. So I basically just have a find active finder for everything.
Okay.
But yeah, actually, we could start with the find active. Why not do that? So our version of soft delete, let's do that with the, sorry that I cannot zoom in this. Maybe I can. No. For mailing lists, we could add a field active and then try that. That would make sense for you? Okay. So who here is familiar with the migrations plugin? Yes, mostly everyone. So let's start with the migrations plugin. The first thing we want to do today is, I see that in our project, let me make this bigger. Our schema is not here. So if I wanted to redeploy my application or share it with someone else, they would have to load a SQL file, which is less than ideal. Okay, so we want a versioned way or a way to have versions of our database schema. Does that make sense for people that don't know the migrations plugin? Okay, so we want a way that we could get back our schema from the database and that we can also apply versions to it. Like this is version 1 of the database, this is version 2, this is version 3, and so on and so on. So let me have here another of those, make it bigger. This is where my application is. So if I do this, being cake, you will see all the available shells that cake make. Is this readable here? It's like a bit darker. Right? There's no way to center that, right, Larry? Larry's not there yet. It's difficult to read. Yeah, it was full screen, so I will have to sacrifice that. Let me do it. Come on, out of it. There you go. That's better. So this is all the shells that Cake has available to you. So you know Bake already? Or he used that? The bucket, which is a plugin, I'm sure you already saw it in the page, is this icon here. Has also some shells, one for doing some simple benchmarking, and another one for trimming white space at the beginning and the end of the file. And the shell that we're going to use right now is migrations. So let's start with that. So bean, cake, migrations. And it shows us the list of possible commands. The actual command that I want to use does not live in migrations. It lives in the bake. So we want to bake our first migration. So cake bake migration. It's migration snapshot. And it takes a name. So I can do -h and it will tell me what it requires. Migration snapshot, some options, and a name. So I'm gonna call it newsletter step, initial newsletter step. Okay? So it does this. It says that it created some files. If I go to my app, I can see now there's in config, there's a new folder called migrations, and I have a file there. This is the file.
José, didn't you need to put it in the plugin?
Well, that's another thing that I don't do.
Why not?
Unless I'm gonna distribute the plugin, I'll do that. Otherwise, I want only one version of my database. If you have it in plugins, then you have multiple versions of your database. And I don't want that. I want to coordinate that my plugins follow my application. And sometimes, when I import plugins from the community that have their migrations, what I do is that I run their migrations and then I bake an initial snapshot. So I get the table from them and I control them from now on. So the scheme is now mine. If I upgrade the plugin and I run migrations again, I don't want that to break my app. So I want the control from there. So what we can see here is it created a class called initial newsletters app with an up method and a down method. Okay, let me just open this. So we have two functions, up and down. And it describes our database. So we have some columns for table, we have another table with another column, some indexes. This is a description of our database in PHP. If I went and deleted the database right now, I would, lose the data, but the schema is here. I can tell the migrations plugin, create it again for me, and it will be there. Just hopefully exactly as it was before. I said hopefully because in some database drivers there are small differences that make small changes, but they are usually inconsequential. But if it's important to you, please open a ticket in the migrations plugin. Yeah?
It's just our triggers.
Triggers, I'm not sure you can create them with the syntax, but you can for sure at the end of the up method or down. Oops. At the end of it, you can write your own SQL. So create the triggers. The migrations plugin cannot detect trigger, but it can detect constraints, referential constraints, and it will create it for you. I don't know a lot of people that do triggers nowadays. That's why it's not there. They're rare and they're usually very specific. And importing code dynamically from a database is difficult. That's also risky because you don't always have the permissions for creating triggers. So that's why. But by all means, if you have the triggers, you just have them in another folder and you just import it with execute, include this file. I do stuff like that. Questions so far? Yes?
Is it possible to only get some of the tables? Let's say, for example, you have a plugin-based application and everybody's maintaining their own database tables. Is it possible to do that, or it has to be the whole one?
If I remember correctly, you need all of it. Yeah, you do. Okay. You have something here which is called required table. Required table requires a table class in your app. If it matches the table matches an app a table class in your application, only those tables will be there.
But it's not possible to reverse engineer the tables from your database. Only a few tables, and make a snapshot of the few tables.
If you use required table. But what happened here is that it disregarded entirely what it had as code. And it went to the database, went through all the tables, and it reverse engineered them.
Yes, but it's not possible to take a couple of tables, not all of the tables, but a couple of tables, specify the table name.
No, it's currently not possible. If it's a feature that you really want, open a ticket, or even better yet, a pull request. But honestly, that's the kind of feature that is that takes some time to implement for small time gains. What I do? This is what I do. Whatever I don't want, I just delete. Okay? Yeah.
The force table, does that work within a plugin?
Sorry again?
Required table, does that work within a plugin?
Yeah, it does.
To answer that question, if you just wanted your plugin tables, you could specify the plugin, say force tables, it would only
it does.
migrations
Yeah.
to plugins which have logic.
The required table also works inside plugins. When you combine it with plugin something, newsletter, and required table, then it will only look there. Okay, any other questions? No. So now we have this, and what we want to do is create a new field in the mailing list table, right? So I do this. Cake, bake, was it migration?
Yes.
Yes, it's migration. Cake, bake, migration, add, this is magic syntax, add is active, note the casing, is, and then uppercase A, active, to, mailing,
Say A.
mailing, list. If I remember correctly, I don't remember correctly, so we just add this. It's active boolean. Okay? So now I have a new file, and I check that what I did was correct, because I'm not 100% sure. I have this new file. Yep, it worked.
Can you please show the command again?
Yeah, the command is this. Let me just forget about it.
That's the name for the migration.
This one here.
And then you do this.
Take bank. Migration has is active to mailing list.
Good. So I verified that what I wanted to do is correct. Let me just double verify. To the table mailing list, add column is active type boolean, default null. Actually no, my default should be true. Or maybe just 1. And it cannot be null. Okay?
Would you not want after?
Mm-hmm.
Would you not want after if you wanted to make sure you're creating a modified field? You wanted to take the logic that's included in the table, use the after and the on. Rather than just appending to the end of the table every time. You were OCD about how the column send you a table.
I'm actually not sure if
It does support after.
Yeah.
It does? Okay.
It does.
Support before, so in the ticket from Rob.
Yeah.
Rob's a bit slow on the ticket.
when I doubt about something, it's usually because I don't use it. I don't place columns in a specific order because when the tables start to grow bigger, the migrations take significantly more time to run. Yeah, it needs to rewrite the table to put it in the right order. So finally, bin cake migrations. Migrate. Why not? Thank you. So it's saying that this one has not been run yet. It says down. So I can run migrations, migrate. And I can go and verify my database. Sorry that is so small. Is active. Make sense? Okay. So now I'll go to the mailing lists controller. Sorry, I wanted the mailing list entity. And I definitely do not want people to touch this field. Anyone has an idea why?
Disable your record.
For example, yes. So in this type of applications, when you deal with mailers, you usually have logic attached to enable or disabling something specific. You need to maybe remove some hooks, some cron jobs, some stuff, or unsubscribe people from something. So if you let people change that from a forum, it's going to be more difficult. So it's better to have a specific action, and that's what we're going to do now, for enable or disabling something. Let's go now to the mailing lists table. And we add a new function, find active. It gets a query and some options. Meanwhile, I'm going to document this. It returns a query. It receives a query. And an array of options. Good? I don't usually do that. Yeah. Here, what I usually do is I document this finder does not accept any extra options. And what we do here is just return query where these alias field is active. In the case that you wanted a timestamp, you would say where active since or inactive is less than right now.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
Is alias field just good practice, or will it be applied automatically if you don't do it?
It won't. It only is applied for select.
Okay, so you should do it in case you call it from some other table or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially when you're dealing with a plugin.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
It's also useful if you have
Is it clear so far?
Yeah.
for IDs on
Almost this.
Fantastic. So we go back to the controller. And in our functions, let's see how many finds do we have. We have one for, well, we only have gets and finds. So the question is, let's start with a difficult one. In delete, do we want to actually delete or to soft delete? That would be a question. Another question is, if I do want to hard delete, then can I delete inactive ones or active ones? That's the kind of questions that are difficult. They always change from project to project somehow, and that's why I don't use the soft delete behaviors, because there's always one specific difference that makes it really hard to get like smooth across all the application. So in my case,
Basically, one thing that each data wise, deleting data from each table is huge time. You want to have a background process for this, actually. That's why short delete is a must. Anyway, short delete delete it once, must, I delete it. But the indeed data can take a long time.
okay, what he's saying is that when you have a big table, deleting from the table, when it's a lot of rows that you have to delete, it takes a long time, whereas updating a column takes less time, and that is true. So, yeah, we could just soft delete. In the case of deleting one row, it's equally fast. When you need to delete a bulk of rows, I would agree with you. Let's start with the pagination. So I'm going to define public paginate here.
One more thing. It is low because cascade is true, and it has to be always related models that also basically does left turn between two tables and long
Why does it do left turn?
Because it tries to find all the related data.
When you cascade delete? Yeah, I agree. It's that if you enable cascading deletes in Cake, then deleting takes a long time. That's true. That's a trade-off when you use cascade delete. I rarely use it for that reason. I think the cascade deletes works great for cases like a post and images. So usually you don't have an image with 1 million images, a post with 1 million images, you just have a post with mostly 5. So the cascading delete is good. And the images is something that takes space in your disk, so it's good to delete. So here I set the finder to active. mailing lists, I can see that in the SQL log, I get where mailing list dot is active equals 1. Right? So we make that. We can actually try changing in the database our content and changing the last one to 0. And of course, that one is not there anymore. Now the question is, how do I, if I wanted to replicate, please don't write that yourself because I'm just going to show it real quick. It's not here. Yeah. If I wanted to apply it every single time, I would do this. Public function before find, it gets an event and a query and some options, and then I return query find active. Right? So if I go to the controller again and comment this out, I can still see the condition being applied. That is basically what the plugin does. It does a bit more stuff, but especially because it tries to hack the update all and delete all, which takes no callbacks to achieve the same. Okay? So one rule of thumb that I have discovered myself is that before find is rarely a good idea. And for the same reasons that I explained it to you with the soft delete. It's because you don't actually always want a condition to be applied. It can be true though for stuff like multi-tenancy, where all queries need to be scoped to a particular client. So no matter what, no matter where you are, it needs to be for that particular client. If you go in any other way, then that's a bug in your system. Okay? Tell me if I'm going too fast or too slow for you. The mailing list? Oh, this table in the browser?
No,
This, but if you can read it.
the table.
Oh, here. This one?
Yeah.
Is it clear for everyone? And of course, we also want to edit and delete only what's active. And here is exactly where I mean that soft delete can be dangerous. Can I view something that is soft deleted? Someone raise a hand and tell me if it should be possible or not. Depends, exactly.
If for example, if you have a ticket system and you change a ticket from one status to another,
Yeah.
and you want to track the status,
Exactly. So anyway, you have to deal with the logic of yes, I want it, or yes, or no, I do not want it. So it is a trade-off between I want to disable the magic, or just to remember to use the finder or not when I need it. Okay. So in my case, and in most of the cases, I would say, Cake excels at least in the CRUD part on admin interfaces, and usually admins do want to see deleted stuff. So for view, no. For add, I don't need to do anything. For edit, I would say it's the same. And delete, maybe we need to change this. Is it interesting to you for me to do a soft delete, or should I go somewhere else? It's quite trivial, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just specify the kind.
So let's quickly review what we did. We created 2 migrations. The migrations were run with the command from the migrations plugin. And we created a finder in our table class. Okay, so was everyone here familiar with custom finders? No? Okay. Did you understand more or less how it worked?
I didn't understand how it's initialized. Find it.
Okay. So you can see here that active is a word after find. So that's a convention. Anything that I create in the table class called, for example, public function find inactive, that becomes something that I can call on the find function later. So I can do later, if I finish this function somehow, I can then do table find inactive.
That's how it's already working now.
Okay.
When you change it in the database, it already shows.
Let's go back to the controller. Remember this, paginate? This is the same. Let's remove this.
So create a finder to denote custom.
Let's remove this, and instead of paginating mailing list like this, we do find active. It's exactly the same. Yep. Okay, great. Something that I wanted to show as well.
I have a question
Yeah.
on the paginate. I use it often to use a custom query finder for the concat field between first name, last name, for example. Is this also possible in the find method you changed?
Sure, yes.
Yes?
Let's see if I can.
For example, when we have first name, last name, we created a full name. And we want to search for or make full name searchable, but we have to concat in on the query.
Yeah. Is that interesting to you? Finding by full name? Sure, let's do that. So that's better done in the users. Not sure if it's part of the plugin or it's actually part of the app. Part of the plugin. So let's go to the users table. And let's create a new custom finder. So I created a find with full name. And it would return query, select, full name query
function concat.
So, for the people who are not familiar with this, query func is a builder that is available in the query object for creating SQL functions. Some of the functions are methods in that builder, but you can basically call any method as a string, any method name, and it will be converted to the same function in SQL. All of them, if I remember correctly, get an array of arguments for the function. And for security, so you don't get SQL injections, all of the values, so if, for example, I did this, if I did first name, I have a typo, it doesn't matter, and last name, that will be converted to values instead of column names. So it will, by all means, try to not make your application exposed to SQL injections. So to tell Cake that you actually wanted to make those strings something from the database on columns, then you use the identifier. There are two types, the identifier and literal.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I use literal. Is there a difference, a specific, do you know that?
The difference is, literal is literal, so it will not be touched. If you write there, whatever you write, that's what is going to be used. But if you use identifier, it will be grabbed in a identifier expression, which has some benefits, or maybe for you it has none. It is that if you turn on identifier quoting, it will quote the column. It's also a bit better for some advanced plugins that are traversing the tree of nodes in the query. So it can get, oh, this is a field, I should not touch it, instead of something else.
What about aliasing with the table alias? Is that happening when using an identifier, or do you need to do it? Or?
Again, can you repeat that?
Aliasing with the table alias, like there was an example before. What would be about that in this
You
case?
can call alias field.
Here as well.
Yeah.
Oh. Just around.
Just here in this key.
The key, just okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it wouldn't automatically make it an identifier.
No.
Okay.
So something I wanted to present for CakeFest, but I couldn't get done, is that I have a personal library of global functions. Mm-hmm.
Just on the last, why would you not use a virtual field for your finder?
That's a question that I wanted to solve, because there's two ways of presenting virtual fields. One is with an entity getter, but entity getters are not findable. So this is findable. Okay? I'm gonna iterate a bit more on this. It depends on if you want your virtual fields findable or not, where you construct them. So I have stuff like this. So what I wanted to show, we have an identifier function. So I do stuff like that, which makes the stuff more readable. Okay, so now I have a find with full name. Let's see what the consequences of this are. So let's go to users controller. Is it readable if I split the screen like that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Could you zoom in just a little bit more, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Better?
Yes, thanks. Perfect. Some of us are going blind.
Let me remove that and put it here. With full name. So let's see what the consequences of that is. Expect an error. Gladly was not an error, but what happened to all the columns? So if I go here, I see that what? Only full name was selected. What happened to all my columns?
You have to define them.
You have to define them, that's a way. Or you can use autofills. So one of the reasons I call my finder with full name is so that I can remember that there is a finder modifying my select. So since I can remember now that I'm modifying my select, I can tell Cake, hey, I don't actually want only one field, get me all of them. There's an equivalent way of doing this. It is calling select again. With what? People that got me a solution before?
Just a guess.
All, find all? No.
The table name, almost there, almost there. With the table object, yeah. And it's the same. In fact, that's what autofills does internally. That's a good thing, but I was not going to mention it. Autofills is a bit more than doing this. If you have contains, then you also want if you want the fields for the contains, then autofills will also do that for you. So that's why I use autofills.
And isn't there some concept like query override, like query append? So that you can basically take the select and just append with the concat.
Not sure what you mean.
There is query : override to override parts of.
Yeah.
And is there a query append?
Yes, but the thing is that at this point you're not appending anything because you haven't defined any fields. It's Cake at the end saying you didn't specify any fields, so let me help you. I'm gonna select all of them. Okay? I'm going to iterate over this so you can see how it progresses.
Okay.
Okay? Now we need to find by it. So let's create a naive version of it. Find by full. Okay? So I'll return query, and this is what it says naive. Let me do where full name like I'll go and check what it did, and oh, of course I need to use it. Oops. Fine. I don't know. What names do we have? Joe.
This is also very handy. Maybe I use the CakeEC search plugin a lot because it's very comfortable to use and implement. And this is also very nice to use it inside an index find. So we can use the get rest to find.
So what he's saying is that you should use a search plugin for getting the options from the URL and convert them into something searchable in your table. I agree with him. I use also the search plugin.
There's also Friends of Cake.
I use the Friends of Cake one
Oh.
for the lack of knowledge of what the other plugin does. That's all of it. So let's try to see what I did. MySQL is not happy. MySQL says you cannot use full name as something searchable, even though you define it in the select. So MySQL, and for a reason, I understand it, you cannot use aliases defined in the select in the where. You can though in the order and the group by, but not in the where. So we need to make this a bit less naive, and we need to use our full name somehow here. Suggestions?
Use a having clause.
Exactly.
Use a having clause.
Spoiler machine.
No. But that's actually
Why not?
an idea. That's actually an idea. But why wouldn't I use it?
I don't know.
Suggestion? Hmm? No. Most of the database will understand that.
You also needs a group.
Huh?
Also needs a group or a fake group.
Does it? I cannot remember if it does. I think it doesn't. But if it doesn't, that's one of a downside. In this case, it actually doesn't matter much. So that's a clever suggestion. But if you're doing it with other columns where you expect an index to be used, having will not use that index. So it will do a table scan. If it's a big table, then it will probably not finish. So you want to use an index. So other suggestions, please.
Subquery.
Subquery. Don't make me work more.
Select.
Hmm?
Concat, could you use all or the select function in that?
Sure, that's a great idea. So, how fancy you want it? Like dirty fancy or really fancy?
Clean.
You want it clean. Let's start simple, and then I'm going to create a protect function. Build full name with a query. that returns. I'm gonna go up. And get all this and put it here. Okay. And then use here this build full name with query. Right? I can now use it in my where. So instead of using an array, since I cannot, thanks PHP, use an object as a key in an array, should have used Python. It receives an expression, and then it returns expression. And now it's actually nicer because I can use a function like this build full name.
Full name is the concat oder? There.
And of course, it's really important that semicolon.
Do you pass in the query into the build full name?
Yeah. Full name needs a query. That's extremely true. Kind of the fewer words spoken. Thank you.
It's hid in his mind.
Now I have this, and I can see my SQL log that I have where this, and I have my full name as well. So what does that mean for me? That it does return only those that match those. Yeah, does that answer your question? I bet you already knew.
Yeah, I think it's very important because these are the strengths of the new ORM.
Well, thank you for that. Another fancier version, I'm just going to keep it simple for now, is that this here, concat, or most of the things in the ORM are something called an expression interface, which is an object that can be converted to SQL. So another way is to create our own object implementing the expression interface and doing whatever logic there is. Recently there was a question in the IRC channel for doing match against in MySQL, and the suggestion I gave him was to create a custom class that he could just do new match against, pass some options. So I just want you to remember that those are classes, those classes have methods, and that you can create those classes yourself if you want really complex conditions that are reusable in specific parts and different parts of your query. Okay? What else? We were doing something else, I guess. Is it interesting to you doing the search part with the search plugin, or not at all? So his suggestion was that you take name equals though here, and that is converted somehow to a search. Is that interesting to you, or should I skip it in Charlie?
I personally skip it because it will take a lot of time. I mean, it will just take a lot of time to get correct. Won't it? I don't know.
It doesn't actually get them.
Hmm?
It's not actually a lot of time, but if you prefer to skip, it's fine. Unless anyone else wants.
Maybe an idea is to show how to paginate on virtual fields. Pagination on virtual fields.
Like sorting.
Yes, sorting. Thank you.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's create another function. Public function. Find ordered by full name. I'm pretty sure this is becoming repetitive, but his suggestion is makes sense, makes a lot of sense, because not everyone understands immediately that what you can do in one class of a query, you can basically apply to the rest of the others.
Use match, command query.
So who can give me the solution here? Yes? Yeah, but there's a problem that build full name returns an object. Okay,
You
almost
need
there.
to use expressions again, probably.
Sorry?
Expressions again.
Yeah, well, there is a function called order desk.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So if I go to my controller again and call find order, sorry. Full name. And go back here. I can see that it is ordering by this concat again. Make sense? This is one way, but he wanted to see pagination. So I'm not going to use this method. Okay? It's just for you to know that there is this option. But since I know I'm using with full name, and I told you before that MySQL allows to use aliases from the select in the order clause, I can actually do something about it. The thing is, you know already, or maybe know, that if I do users, or maybe just click here, I can sort, right? You can see, can you see the URL? Maybe? So it's because I can zoom in the contents of a page, but not this part. Let me just copy it somewhere. So this is the URL. If you inspect it, it says that users name equals doe, sort equals ID, and direction equals desk. Right? I can do that for all the columns here. For first name, for last name, which is the same, locale, created, and if I change it here, name, it also changes as well. Okay? So it would be, maybe it would work if I do full name, maybe ask. Well, it doesn't. Why? Someone that has used Cake? Yes. And the reason is that Cake will whitelist only the columns that are in your table. Because if you let anyone write here whatever they want, I can write Bobby Table's name. You know the joke, right? Moby
Yeah.
tables.
It's great joke.
And please read carefully for a minute. Okay.
Moby tables.
So, even I read a tweet recently, which is a security expert with a name with an apostrophe in the last name, and she was asked how do you keep finding all those the SQL injection exploits? I just write my full name in the form. So yeah. So Cake will not allow anyone write anything there, unless you tell it yes, you can use that. So we can do paginate. Another setting is called sort word list. And if I do this, boop, it changed. Desk. Desk. So it works now. I can see it in the SQL log that is doing it for me now. And that was the magic of it. There's one downside. Is that whitelists are not blacklists. That means that when you start writing a whitelist, you also need to write all the fields that are okay to filter on. And for some people, this is a deal breaker, but for me, it's like, wow, that's nice. Why? Because it actually makes you think, what is sortable? Do I want people to actually sort on local? Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But there are fields that are difficult to sort by your database that you don't have indexes on. So it's better to specify only the fields that you have any index for sorting on. Otherwise, your database is gonna be unhappy with it. So just gonna list ID maybe, create it, and modify it. Okay. I can sort by this one. I can sort by this one as well, by this one as well, but not by name or last name. I'm gonna modify that table so it only shows full name. So let me go to users, index,
This is whitelisted. Sag mal.
yep, full name. And what happens is that I get full name without a space, that is fixable, but I can click here and sort. Yeah.
So what I also want to mention, what I read in many posts and many people outside in the community make a mistake. They use this function, and afterwards, when they find on an index, they use the operator sort. This would destroy the pagination filtering. So this have to be avoided. So when we use our custom find methods and we use this pagination sort whitelist, then afterwards in the find method we have to avoid sort by or sort. Then because this will override and destroy our query, sorting query, ascending, descending on a specific field.
What you're saying is, I think, that if we define a default sorting in our controller and someone overrides it, that would be the word for it. The sorting, yes, is overridden.
But it's a common mistake.
Yeah, it is. We agree that's a common mistake. Maybe it's an annoyance that should have a fixable. I understand what you're saying, and that was a decision that was taken early in the development of Cake 3. Pagination used to work without the override, and there were a pile of tickets saying it should be overridden because of a lot of reasons. And then we decided that it was more sensible to do that than other things. And of course, I was the person who implemented the no override at the beginning, and I was sad at the beginning that, like, well, I would have to find a solution myself. But I had to find a compromise for people who wanted to override. How do you solve it yourself?
I didn't remember right now, but I solved it some way.
Yeah, what I usually do is I don't let people sort by that field in the interface. So that's not in my whitelist.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. Oops.
Maybe we can have a default sort. Default sort.
Yeah.
Well, we only had that one specific bug. I'm not sure if it's interesting for me to show how to put a space there. Just let me know. It is a little interesting. Okay. It's here in the table in our build full name. Let me remove some space here. Oops. And unsurprisingly, you just need to add a space here. And that's it.
So you show that with the space, but you sort without space.
Sorry?
If you order by without space.
Yeah, the order is with space. MySQL don't care.
But depending on the names, would it be so? There could be some.
No, of course, when you use like, it can be whatever. That's why I don't like much. But yeah, it's something that you need to decide what is the finding operator that is suitable for you. It can be actually a match against index if you're using MySQL, or if you're using Postgres, you use a gen index, or maybe I don't know. You have other sorts, like you index it in Elasticsearch, then find it there, get the IDs back, and filter with that. That's one way. I need some water. So I was looking at the tables and I wanted to show an example of Okay. Now to get back into my script of what I wanted to show, or maybe it's actually Megan is here, or
No.
Walter, for a coffee break. I think it's already, oh no, 1 hour. It's in half an hour more. We'll have a coffee break unless you're too tired right now.
That's
What I wanted to show is a common question, and it already happens at the beginning of the morning, is where should I put my custom logic in? Where should I put something like a service class? Where should I put something like, is it okay to have a model that doesn't use a table? That question comes over and over and over. For me it's surprising, but I understand why that question happens. It is surprising for me because it is quite straightforward once you see the solution. But I understand why it happens. It's because Cake, it has been really good at building a framework in which you know exactly where to put your classes. So that's why we have folders. We have console, controller, model, shell, template. And when something that is not exactly adapted to those folders comes up, then you are in doubt. Like, well, is it the model? Is it the controller? Is it everything else? I tend to create more folders myself. And if it's something that is specific to my business logic, I also put it inside model. So this table that we have here, campaigns, actually have some business rules. We have status, which is something we should probably not mingle with manually. We need a template, and we need we need name, status, and a template, which are stuff we cannot live without. There's no campaign without a status, without a template, without a name. And trust me, if what I'm going to do right now is overkill for this application, but it will come up in your applications. In my specific case, it came up with the users subscription part of my work. What I mean is, after you have done some sort of CRUD application and you try to scale it and put more features and more features and more features, there are some hard truths in that workflow that cannot be changed. You will discover them at some point. Like in my case, all the users needed to be subscribed only after they were assigned a marketing number. If the marketing number was missing, that was really bad for the business. So one hard truth about my users is that they needed that number. No number, no user. But nonetheless, a lot of users were being created without that number. So I went on and refactored, this is what I'm going to show to you now, all the users handling logic, so it was impossible to create a user without that marketing number. So what I'm going to do is make it impossible for a campaign to be created without a template. Using specific, yes, getting the magic signal. Let's do a coffee break. So that was a nice introduction of what's coming up in the next hours.
Well played.
Yeah. So see you in how many minutes do we have? Is it
10,
10, 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay.